There's something fascinating happening in Malaysia right now that, if all goes to plan, has the potential to shock the world. As the situation across East Asia remains precarious, tech giants looking to safeguard their operations are eyeing up alternative options. Malaysia, meanwhile, wants to take advantage. To this end, leading international firms such as Intel and Infineon have invested respective amounts of $7 billion and $5.6 billion in Malaysia. Meanwhile, American multinational Nvidia is looking to team up with Malaysian conglomerate YTL to build an AI data center in the southern Johor province, to the tune of another $4.3 billion. In addition, Google and Microsoft have each promised $2 billion worth of investments to develop their own data centers and cloud facilities, whilst offering AI skills training to hundreds of thousands of Malaysian citizens. Now, the current government under Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim seeks to attract over $100 billion in foreign investments, whilst offering up some $5 billion in fiscal support to incentivize industrial growth. An ambitious target, yet it's beginning to work. The stream of capital flowing into Malaysia includes many notable names: American multinational Texas Instruments, Austria's AT&S, Germany's Bosch, Sweden's Ericsson, and major Chinese firms such as Tongfu Microelectronics, along with Huawei subsidiary Xfusion. The government wants to seize on this opportunity to move up the global value chain, transforming Malaysia into a high-tech economy like Taiwan or South Korea. But the path to economic success won't be a walk in the park, and before Malaysia can call itself wealthy, it must navigate through a myriad of challenges. Some of these are of its own doing, whilst others are beyond its own control. Its location at the heart of Southeast Asia puts it slap bang in the middle of a US-Chinese trade war, whilst local Malaysian firms face stiff competition from chip giants such as Taiwan's TSMC and South Korea's Samsung. High risk equals high reward, and if Malaysia plays its cards right, it could soon see itself as a major player in the global chip game. Known for its lush rainforests and idyllic tropical islands, Malaysia has long sought to shift its economy away from low-end manufacturing towards more high-value industries. Like South Korea and Taiwan, Malaysia struggled to grow its economy for most of the 20th century, and whilst each saw some gains in GDP per capita, living standards eventually stagnated and productivity began to decline. This phenomenon, known as the middle income trap, keeps nations in a state where they're no longer poor, but not rich either. During the mid-1980s, South Korea and Taiwan finally broke through the middle income trap, and their respective economies ballooned to high income status. Malaysia, meanwhile, never saw the same economic explosion of the other Asian tigers, because unlike the other two, it failed to innovate in the same way, and thus remained trapped. Almost half a century later, Malaysia is looking for a second chance. You see, the status of Taiwan has all but continued to strain relations between Beijing and Washington. Tech giants looking to boost profits and secure themselves have begun to slowly expand their presence across the entire ASEAN region. In this race for chip dominance, Malaysia is uniquely placed. With well-established infrastructure, a robust supply chain, a pool of skilled multilingual workers to choose from, and decades of experience in semiconductor manufacturing, Kuala Lumpur indeed has a distinct edge over its regional competition. As of 2024, Malaysia is the world's 6th largest exporter of semiconductor chips, accounting for 13% of the global market for packaging, assembly, and testing, in what's become known as the industry's back end. Now, local firms are looking to leverage the influx of foreign capital to expand into the industry's front end, with high-value processes such as wafer fabrication and photolithography. It comes as Kuala Lumpur unveils its new Industrial Master Plan 2030, an ambitious set of policies that aim to capitalize on Malaysia's unique situation to revolutionize its industrial landscape and manufacturing capabilities. Still, Malaysia's had a mixed track record when it comes to large-scale plans like this. Beginning in the 1970s, Kuala Lumpur sought to unify its multi-ethnic population through radical economic changes. The result was what's called the New Economic Policy, a structured effort to eliminate poverty and redistribute wealth across the country whilst transitioning away from exporting raw materials towards more high-value industries. As a result, a new homegrown electronics industry began to emerge, and the government poured in huge sums of money in the hopes that it would spur real economic growth. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out in the way that they'd hoped, because despite their best efforts, policymakers failed to recognise the importance of research and development, or R&D. This costly oversight effectively doomed Malaysia to the middle-income trap. And to make matters worse, the redistribution of wealth along ethnic lines inadvertently led to a brain drain, with thousands of non-ethnic Malays leaving the country in pursuit of better opportunities elsewhere. Nonetheless, Malaysia had managed to achieve some remarkable success in some respects. Starting in the 1970s, you see, the country also began work on transforming its northwestern state of Penang into the Silicon Valley of the East. With its origins as a traditional fishing village, Penang's strategic location was quickly noticed by the British, and thus it served as one of British Malaya's main trading outposts in Southeast Asia. Following independence, Penang was transformed into one of the region's largest manufacturing hubs. With the introduction of the Bayan La Paz industrial zone, multinationals such as Hewlett-Packard, Bosch, Intel and AMD flocked to Penang to take advantage of generous tax rates, low labour costs, reliable infrastructure and skilled workforce. For a state that's similar in size to the city of Berlin, Penang punches well above its weight in industrial outputs. It commands an astounding 5% of the world's entire semiconductor exports, and today the region is home to more than 350 multinationals, supported by over 3,000 smaller enterprises. Unfortunately though, Penang's importance has begun to decline in recent times. Part of the reason why is that representatives in Malaysia's capital felt as though they'd been left behind, and many years were spent reinvigorating Kuala Lumpur. Much of the country's talent and capital were now being funneled into the capital, which came in part at the expense of Penang. Heavyweights such as Samsung and Taiwanese giant TSMC have since made Malaysia's chip industry look somewhat irrelevant, but now the government has a chance to make things right. Significant resources have been committed to boosting the country's industrial sector, and reviving Penang will play a huge part in making this happen. The construction of 3 new industrial parks have already drawn attention from the likes of Intel, Texas Instruments and Bosch, alongside new names such as Lam, UCT and Dexcom. In 2023 alone, Penang attracted a record-breaking $12.8 billion in investments from abroad, more than it's seen in the previous 7 years combined. In neighbouring Kulim, Germany's Infineon have invested $2.2 billion to construct the world's largest production facility for next-generation silicon carbide chips, an essential component in electric cars, renewable energy systems and AI. Meanwhile, local firm Silterra are leading the production of cutting-edge silicon photonic chips for AI data centres right next door. Yet, all is not what it seems. Malaysia, you see, has its fair share of pitfalls that have made some in the tech market think twice about setting up shop here. For starters, Malaysia is experiencing record levels of immigration. With a shortage of well-paying jobs and an ever-weakening currency, many of its educated workforce are leaving the country seeking better opportunities elsewhere. Concerns over a nationwide brain drain are in the spotlight, with 62% of the Malaysian diaspora being employed in skilled professions overseas, compared to only 3% of that same diaspora working in low-skilled occupations. The government plans to train up an extra 60,000 high-end local engineers to meet industry demand, but in a country whose universities produce a mere 5,000 engineering graduates per year, this will be no easy feat. Meanwhile, to the south, English-speaking Singapore has proven itself as a challenging obstacle to Kuala Lumpur's tech dreams. Just last month, Singapore welcomed in $7.8 billion worth of investments from Vanguard International Semiconductor, an affiliate of Taiwanese chip giant TSMC. They've partnered up with Dutch chipmaker NXT to construct a new foundry on the island, with production set to start just 3 years from now. With a location that puts it within literal walking distance from Malaysia, and with wages that are often more than triple what they are back home, Singapore presents itself as the ideal location for professionals looking to further their careers outside Malaysia. To put this into perspective, as of 2022, the Malaysian diaspora, that is, the number of Malaysians who have moved overseas, was just short of 1.9 million. Of this, some 1.1 million were living in Singapore. That's more than 3% of Malaysia's entire population. Moreover, Singapore also has an incredibly stable governance and little to no political turmoil whatsoever. Unfortunately, the same can't really be said for Malaysia, at least not in recent times. In just the last 6 years, Malaysia has been through 5 different prime ministers, largely because of corruption and political scandals. This kind of environment isn't exactly one that appeals to multi-billion-dollar companies looking for somewhere to settle down. Singapore won't be the only competition, however. Southeast Asia on the whole is going through an economic boom, and tech firms looking to diversify their operations away from China and Taiwan have plenty of countries to choose from. Vietnam, for instance, has also set its sights on becoming another big player in the global chip trade. Hanoi has offered up generous corporate taxes, political stability, and supportive policies, which have caught the eyes of titans such as Synopsys and Samsung, the latter of which has pledged another $3.3 billion to add to their growing list of investments in the country, which are well into the tens of billions. Meanwhile, over to the west, Thailand has garnered significant interest from the likes of Western Digital and Delta Electronics, thanks to its geopolitical neutrality, skilled workforce, and generous tax privileges. In particular, the Eastern Economic Corridor is a prime example of Thailand's commitment to becoming one of Asia's great technological hubs. Offering generous tax breaks, streamlined regulatory processes, and robust infrastructure, the Thai government plans to use this zone to pull in another $13.7 billion in foreign investments over the next 5 years. That being said, Malaysia's economic foresight and its vast experience in the chip trade have put it in the prime position going forward. Today, Malaysia stands as a frontrunner in the reshaping of the global semiconductor supply chain, but there is still much to be done. To pull itself out of the middle income trap, Malaysia must focus on transitioning away from low-value back-end industries, such as testing and packaging chips, to more innovative R&D focused activities. Chip design, for instance, could prove more useful to Malaysia than assembling, and some local companies, such as Opstar Technology and Inari Armatron, already have the means to do this. Nonetheless, chip design is a knowledge-intensive task with high barriers to entry. Malaysia will first need to find ways of fixing its chronic labour shortage and fostering a culture of innovation. There are, however, wildcards that Malaysia can play. When it comes to Singapore, for instance, Kuala Lumpur could opt for cooperation rather than competition. In a sort of industrial symbiosis, local tech firms could assemble, test and package chips that are designed and manufactured in Singapore. Local innovative firms focused on chip design and wafer fabrication, for instance, would expect to suffer as a result. The trade-off being that Malaysia would retain their original dominance in the so-called back end. Of course, this isn't what Malaysia truly wants, and whether their ambitions of becoming the next Asian tiger will become a reality will hinge on its ability to move towards the cutting edge and out into the unknown. I hope you managed to learn a thing or two from this video. A lot of effort goes into making them, and if you haven't yet subscribed, now would be a good time to do so. Don't forget to also hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any future content, and any suggestions for future videos would be much appreciated. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.